Welcome to the Why Dad podcast. We are your hosts, Paul Wandrey and Andrew Stolpestad, and we are on a mission to figure out what it means to be a man, a husband, a father, and why it matters. And we're trying to figure out how we can be the versions that our kids need and deserve. And to help us along that journey, today we have a special guest, Chad Hufford, dad of 6, husband, Alaskan, who brings a coaching mindset to life as much as he does to money. Chad found Veritas Wealth Management not just to help families manage dollars, but to help them think intentionally about how they steward their resources and build healthy habits to support the life they want. So in this episode, we're going to dive into how that can help dads show up confidently as fathers, husbands, and leaders of their home. Chad, welcome to the show.
Andrew, it's great to be here. I appreciate the opportunity to have this conversation, but also encourage your audience to be more intentional about their future and ultimately have a more abundant life.
Yeah, I think this is an important topic too to cover, especially, no matter where you are, as a current father or even in my situation, trying to aspire towards that goal of being a father. So, and just having this aspect of life on lock. So I'm looking forward to today.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Well, good, and I think it's an important part of life, whether you want it to be or not. I think finances, like our health, there's everybody's an expert right now on YouTube and Instagram and all that, and there's so many misconceptions and misinformation. But like our physical health, our financial health is one of those things that, whether it's complicated or intimidating or not, is a part of your life, and the only thing necessary for that part of your life to deteriorate is to neglect it. Like, you don't have to do anything for your physical. Andrew, you'll find out this when you are a dad and you have some sleepless nights and like your body starts falling apart. You don't have to do anything to make it happen. It just does. You have to work actively against it. And the same thing goes with our finances. They will start falling apart without our attention and effort. And so it is a part of our life. We don't get a choice whether or not we are stewards in this area. The only choice we get is, are we going to be a good one?
Gives me a lot to think about just from that. So thank you. I know Paul wants to get into a couple things, but something you said too, just financial health. I work in the financial industry myself, and I've never heard it said that way, especially when it comes to us as men, fathers, husbands, or just aspiring to be a family man. So just that phrase just left me with so much more, a different aspect to think about all of this.
Yeah, and it comes down to, are we being intentional about it or not? That's what it sounds like. And it's so easy, to do enough to get by. But I'm looking forward to digging into that. Before we jump into that, I want to ask an extremely important question, and that, Chad, is, what is the most dad thing you've done this week?
The most dad thing I've done in the last week?
Yes.
The most proud thing I've done in this week, or the most dad thing?
Dad
you
thing,
decide.
Yeah.
A couple of moments come to mind, and I'll just be really vulnerable with you guys. It kind of goes back to something you said, Paul, about doing just enough to get by. I think a lot of dads are stuck between trying to be perfect and trying to do just enough to get by. And I think what we need to strive for as fathers is excellence. Because excellence is neither of those things. It is not perfection, but it's certainly not doing just enough to get by. It's not checking a box. And I was in a meeting about 5 or 6 days ago, and there was something that came up in the conversation. I just felt incredibly convicted about an event that had happened between me and my son about 1.5 years ago. And I could not get it off my chest. And the meeting went long. I'm already running late in my day. And I believe it was God pulling on my heart. And I was like having this argument with God, like, I don't have a time to address this right now. And then I was like, all right, I'm going to call my son. I'm going to call my son and apologize. And because it was dealt with, but not fully dealt with, 1.5 years ago. Mm-hmm. And then I start justifying it, like, you know what, he probably doesn't even remember, and it's not that big of a deal, and I'm making a bigger deal out of it than it really is. And I was like, okay, I'll give him a call. I'm on my way to my next appointment, and I can just call him, and that way I can, not fall further behind in this day. And I was like, no, that's just trying to parent out of convenience. Mm-hmm. I need to go home. So I drove home, and I'm arguing with God the whole time, telling him, no, like this is too inconvenient. I'll do this later. And showing up with excellence is never convenient. And I get home, and I I have a conversation with my son. I kind of pull him aside and I was like, you're not in trouble or anything like that. Usually when dad comes home in the middle of the day, somebody screwed up. Well, this time it was dad. And I was like, hey, do you remember this incident? It was a long time ago. And he said, yeah. And we talked through it and I apologized. And he's only 7, so I'm on my knees and we're kind of like same height now. And he just leans, guys, I might get emotional. Man, I'm like about to cry halfway, like 5 minutes into this episode. He leans in and starts crying on my shoulder. And this whole time I'm thinking like, man, I was trying to downplay that incident. And in my pride and just all these excuses, not wanting to derail the day, but in that moment I knew that that's exactly what I needed to do. And it didn't make sense on paper, and it certainly didn't make sense for the rest of my day. The whole drive up there, I was fighting this urge, or just fighting this battle in my head. Like, what is the rest of the day going to look like when I do this? And these appointments, like I'm not going to have time, and I'm borrowing all this trouble from the future. But in that moment, I allowed myself to be present with my son and do what needed to be done. So that was my biggest dad moment from the last week. And I will tell you guys, I miss a lot of those. I miss a lot of those. My oldest is 17, so in almost 18 years now of being a dad, I hope become more sensitive to when those moments arise, because Paul, as you know, we can't plan those moments out. We just have to grab them as they come by us. And far too often I've let those moments slip by where I've talked myself out, gave a bunch of pragmatic reasons why it didn't make sense to show up in a certain way. But that time I latched on, and I think it'll bring my son and I closer.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Chad, and being vulnerable. And because I think, as dads, and we have all experienced that moment where, we're in the crossroads of like, okay, do I just keep doing this thing that I can justify like 7 ways to Sunday, or do I go and do the hard thing? And I mean, I think just by evidence of your son crying on your shoulder, like if nothing else, like that's evidence that was worth it. Like, and I imagine, yours and your son's relationship is and will be stronger for that.
Well, and the other part of that is what I said at the outset about excellence, not perfection. If kids know we're not perfect, yet we may not have admitted that to them, but it's no surprise to them when we admit our failures and faults. They know. But when we try to pretend as if we're perfect, I think our kids oftentimes feel that pressure from us that they in turn need to be perfect. If I'm hiding my own faults and failures, then why would my kid be vulnerable with theirs? I mean, that wasn't why I did it, but I think that's just one of the things I'm trying to do is being more open about my mistakes, my shortcomings. I've got 3 teenagers now. They're going to screw up. They're going to do some dumb things. My 15-year-old got detention earlier this week. Doesn't make a habit of it, but it happened, And he came to me and he's like, Dad, you're going to find out anyways. I want you to hear it from me, and this is what happened. And don't worry, he didn't like burn down the building or shoot anybody. But I think by us being vulnerable, it gives our kids the freedom to not feel like they have to be perfect either.
Right.
And I had wonderful parents. They loved me. I was in a stable environment. I knew that what they did, wrong, right, or whatever, was for my good. But I did feel there was this element of perfection that was in our home, and there was not a spirit of owning mistakes and humbly coming forward. So a lot of my mistakes as a kid, I hid from my parents. And a lot of times that leads to greater mistakes. If you're not getting help with what you're struggling with, those mistakes magnify. And I'm trying to create an environment where we call out the elephant in the room. Dad's not perfect. He screws up a lot. He's actually making up this whole dad thing as he goes because there is no script for it. And I'm asking you kids for forgiveness, and let's go on this journey together, shoulder to shoulder rather than butting heads. And then when it's their time, I'm hoping they can step up like my son did and say, hey, I screwed up and here's what happened, and I wanted you to hear about it from my lips and not somebody else's.
Yeah. Yeah, and what I love about this story and this example is, I think it illustrates, one's priorities as a dad. Like you're a financial advisor. Like money is your life, right? And like that is what puts a roof over your family's head and food on the table. Like you could have justified staying in the office. But like what is truly important, what is the most important for us as dads? And that's being there for our kids. To your point, being vulnerable, modeling that the repair will do more than the issue, like than having been perfect in the first place. So I think that's a valuable lesson, to like, while money, we can't do without it. And, we can either be intentional or neglectful of it. At the end of the day, if we choose to be intentional about it, it's going to be for our kids. And that's the only reason it truly matters. I just saw a reel of yours, Chad, and you were talking about how like the why really matters, like if your why is just to like get extra time on the beach or something, like that's only going to get you so far. But if your why, in the case of our audience, is so that you can show up fully and intentionally, and like in your case, you had the luxury, it was inconvenient, but you had the luxury to drive home and have this moment with your son. Like that's pretty powerful.
Well, and going back to what you said about money too, Paul, is we have to be really clear about the role money has in our lives. And I feel that money needs to be looked at as a tool. It's a means to an end and not an end in itself. Money is very easy to measure. Impact is not. Quality relationship with your kids is not easy to measure. Like there's no yardstick for those things. So the tendency, especially as dads, we like a scoreboard. Nobody's gonna watch a football game that doesn't keep score. Like,
Right.
I don't even want to watch my kids' games if they don't keep score. Like, really? I don't care if they're 6. We're not playing to have fun. We're playing to win.
Right.
So we need a scoreboard. The tendency then is to play the games that are easier to keep score. Money is an easy scoreboard, but the tendency, if we're not careful, is to make money now the objective.
Right.
And I meet a lot of people, guys, who are very successful, they're very wealthy, but they spent their 30s, 40s, and 50s trading away their health and time and relationship to build wealth. And now they're trying to use wealth to buy back those things, and it doesn't work. It doesn't work.
Yeah, so it sounds like we've got two extremes. We've got those who like money has been their life in the negative sense, where it's their main objective, and then you have those who are neglectful of it, and they're like, paycheck to paycheck, or just doing the bare minimum, whatever it is. So, what would you say is the healthy balance, especially for like, the dad who he's busy, he's got like, he has his job and he's taking kids to school and sports and he's changing diapers and he's maintaining the house. And honestly, like if he's more on the neglectful side, like I don't have time, to think about investments. I don't have time to think about, paying shit down. Like, what would you say is the happy balance there?
Okay, a couple things on there, and maybe we can unpack this first point more later, and then I'll try to answer this concisely, at least in the moment. Is number one, somebody's gonna teach your kid about money.
Right.
Might be somebody on YouTube, might be their friends, but your kids will learn about money from somebody. You probably want at least the foundations of those lessons to come from you. And that will take intentionality, and also takes, you don't want to be one of those dads that's like, do what I say, not what I do. That doesn't go very far. So we need to lead by example. And when it comes to important lessons, usually more is caught than taught. What I mean by that is what we model is picked up more than how we instruct. So that's one thought. The other thought, as far as balance, there's no formula for this, but it really is are you controlling your money, or is your money controlling your money controlling you? So do you control your money, or does money control you? Because we look at both ends of those extreme guys. The person who they're drowning in debt, they're not paying attention to it, they can't even spell the word budget, they've never saved, they're probably living paycheck to paycheck, they're one downed appliance away from a financial hardship. If their washing machine goes out, they're in tough crap,
Right.
They're being controlled by money. They might be ignoring it, but they're being controlled by a lack of it. The person on the other extreme who, they thought hitting this benchmark, making $200,000 a year, having a net worth of $5 million, like that was going to solve all their problems. Then they get there and they realize, $5 million didn't do it. Maybe 10 will. And they keep chasing this thing because they're trying to solve a non-money problem with more money. That person is still controlled by money. So money has to be managed. Money is a wonderful servant, but it is a ruthless master. And if we don't learn how to control money in telling our money what to do and make it go to work for us, we end up being a slave to it.
Yeah, wow. I love that. To summarize, someone's going to teach your kid about money. Is it going to be you or not? That's a great question for us to consider. And then, are we in control of our money, or is money in control of us? And you gave those two scenarios. Yeah, Andrew?
Oh, I was just going to ask, so where's the starting point to be able to take control or manage that rather than it controlling you, like in those instances that you gave us?
In a very basic sense, it's just having a budget. And I don't want people to think of a budget as something restrictive that is telling you what you can't do. A budget is really just a calendar for your money. So we use a calendar to prioritize. We don't have everything on our calendar, but we have the most important things because we want to make sure those things get done.
Right.
So a calendar actually prioritizes what you are doing. I don't put everything I can't do on my calendar.
True.
I put what absolutely must get done. I want people to think of a budget as the same way. You prioritize your spending. You prioritize where your money will go to work this month with a budget, not to tell you what you can do and what's restrictive and what's off limits, but so you make sure the most important things get done, and then you've got some freedom with whatever is left over. The problem is, when it comes to both our calendars and our budgets, is we usually spend a lot of our energy, time, and money on relatively trivial, meaningless things, and then we get to the end of our day, end of our month, whatever, we realize the most important things haven't been done.
Okay.
And that goes with our time. To be like, I don't have time. I don't have time to work out. I don't have time to read to my kid. I don't have time to do this. I don't have time. And then the next breath, they're telling you about every college football game last Saturday. And don't get me wrong, guys, I love college football. And there used to be a day that I used to sit down and watch 3 or 4 games on a weekend. I don't get to do that anymore. And if I get to watch one, I'm watching it with my boys, and we're having fun, and then we're throwing the football. It's changed. Just like your calendar, just like your day or month, it will fill up with stuff. You don't have to plan to be busy. Busyness just happens. If you don't tell your money where to go, you don't have to worry about spending it. It will get used. But planning out proactively and intentionally the most important places for your money to go this month, that is the first step. I guess for some people, they might even, before they do that, they might need to start tracking where their money went the last couple. So maybe that's the second step for some people. But just the reason I want to clarify this, though, is really the first important step is I'm all about being proactive. And finding out where your money went last month is helpful to a point, but it doesn't change anything about the future. It just lets you know what happened. And a lot of people think a budget is, well, I can tell you everything I spent last month.
Right.
That's great. That's like being on a diet and saying, I can tell you everything I ate yesterday. 2 cheesecakes, 3 hamburgers. Okay, you're not on a diet. You just keep really good records of your bad decisions. Like that, that doesn't help you plan for the future. So
that's a budget great analogy.
Thank you. I made that up as I went. I appreciate that, Andrew. But a lot of people talk about a budget as tracking past expenditures. Living intentionally is working towards the future, not record keeping the past.
Yeah. And what I love about this is one of the underlying themes we've found in our talks with other dads is the difference between, you mentioned it earlier, good enough dad versus an excellent dad is that word you said, and that's being intentional. Now, the other thing we've seen is, good intentions are not enough. So, for example, I could go and to use your calendar analogy, I could go schedule out my next month perfectly and just have everything planned. And then the day comes and the event comes, and I'm like, I'm not going to do this, I'd rather watch that football game or whatever it is. So what would your advice be to not only set the budget, but stick to it?
Well, the other part of that is accountability. Finding people in your life that love you and care about you enough to have that difficult conversation to say, here's what you said you're going to do this month. Here's what you said is important to you in the future. And it doesn't seem like your behaviors are aligning or your choices are aligning with what you said you wanted and where you wanted to go. And I mean, honestly, that's a huge part of our job. Now we have one guy on our team that does more the budget counseling. Most of the people that we work with, already kind of have that piece figured out, or doing at least getting some progress in that area. But very few people invest intentionally, and they might save every month, but they're not really investing. And I'll tell you what the difference is in just a moment. Investing has strategic and specific long-term goals. Saying I want to have as much money as possible when I retire, that's not strategic. It's not measurable. It's really not even that meaningful. And what does that really mean? Does that mean you're going to work 20 hours a day to build up a giant monster pile of cash and sacrifice every relationship in your life, in your health? No, like that's a dumb goal. If somebody's like, I want to retire with as much money as possible, I'm going to tell them nicely, but that's a stupid goal.
Mm-hmm.
That means that money is your God.
Right.
And money is a means to an end. Money is a tool that we use to build a more abundant life, but abundance is so much more than money, and money is a tiny, tiny part of an abundant life. So a meaningful goal would be something more along the lines of, I'm 44 right now, 15 years, I would like the opportunity to replace 80% of my paycheck adjusted for inflation, and that would give me enough money to live comfortably, to chase my grandkids around, to travel, to whatever I want life after my job to look like. Because now we can build a plan around that. It's just think about like building a house. I want to build a house as big as possible. Like that's not meaningful. I need a blueprint. I need something that reverse engineers the future into today. And there's a world of difference, guys, between somebody who is collecting investments for the next 20 years and somebody who is strategically building based on a desired objective. Most people who are saving in their 401k every single month, saving their IRA, maxing out their Roths, most of those people do not have an investment tied to specific long-term goals. They're merely collecting investments. They might be doing a great job saving, but that is not true investing because it doesn't have a specific strategy attaching the tools they're using with what they're trying to build. That requires a financial blueprint, and that's a type of intentionality. And you could use that metaphor in a lot of different ways. Building a business, building a marriage, getting in better health. I mean, that's all a diet is a roadmap of changing who you are into who you want to be. But you have to have those long-term goals. If I'm writing a diet for a marathon runner, that's going to look a lot different than somebody who's trying to lose 20 pounds to look good in their jeans for a high school reunion. So we've got to adapt the tools and the tactics for what that specific objective is. But here's the beautiful part of it, guys. Paul, you know this. Just like parenting, you adapt and pivot a lot. President Eisenhower, when he was general, said no plan survives first contact with the enemy. And Mike Tyson paraphrased that, and he says, everybody got a plan until you get hit in the face. Mm-hmm. And that's true in parenting, and it's true in financial planning as well. So this long-term, specific, measurable, meaningful objective that you have is important, but that will change. It will evolve. The goals my wife and I have now for our family and for our future are way different than they were 10 or even 5 years ago. But we always have a plan. We always have a blueprint connecting who we are today and what we're doing with where we want to be so we can make sure our choices align. And this goes back to what you asked in your question, Paul, is accountability. I have to have accountability. If my goals are fuzzy and ambiguous, my results are going to be pretty fuzzy and ambiguous as well. Mm-hmm. But if I have specific goals that may change in the future, and then we recalibrate the plan, but if I have specific goals, then I can align myself with specific tasks. My goal might be 20 years out in the future, but I can bring that into the next 30 days. Every day I have to hold myself accountable, and having people in my life that also hold me accountable, make sure that my choices, my behaviors, and my habits align with the person and dad and father and leader that I want to be in the future. That's a lot I just threw at you guys.
That was a lot of good stuff, though. Yeah.
Does that answer your question, Paul? To some degree, at least?
It does, absolutely. And my key takeaway is, like, you got to know where you're going, in order to get there. Because otherwise, and we've talked about this a lot in our episodes, and that's if you don't have a destination, if you don't have that meaningful goal that you're talking about, like you're not going to have a why. You're not going to have like, okay, why am I going to like not buy this coffee this morning, or why am I not going to order in today? And two, you're not going to know what steps you're going to have to take to get there. So you're like what's the point of having a budget if I don't have anywhere to go? And I think it comes back to like thinking about that stuff and having those conversations as a dad and with your spouse, and about like what your objectives are as a family, as a whole, and also financially. And all of that is going to come back to also like what are your goals for your kids, you know, for their education, for the sports, for like how much extracurriculars and everything. And all of that takes money.
And all that takes sacrifice too. And that's the important thing about it. Like you just said, your coffee. Like, well, why would I give up my coffee today if there's not a meaningful payoff in the future? And that's whether it's investing literally or investing metaphorically. Like if we don't have a continually clarified picture, something we're continuing to work on, if we don't have some sort of vision of the future, a sacrifice today feels like a cost rather than an investment. So just think of somebody like, getting up every morning, running on a treadmill. Like if I don't think that there's a leaner, fitter, healthier version of me on the other side of that treadmill, why am I going to get up at 5:30 morning to run? And maybe it's not even the treadmill. It was 25 below here in the last week. There was people out there running, and they were crazy. I don't recommend this. This is not advice. But we saw, I was bringing my kids to work to school one morning. There's a guy with a sled full of like weights, and he was cross country skiing at 20 below. I'm like, that's dedication. That guy, guarantee you, he's got a why on the other side of that workout. Yeah. But if our why isn't big enough, it's really hard to continue to make the sacrifice. That's why having some sort of a blueprint connecting your action today with the future payoff is so important. The other thing, and this is where accountability comes in too, is it isn't what you do one day that matters. Skipping the coffee one day isn't going to make a difference in the long run. Throwing $50 into your 401k isn't going to make a difference in the long run. Doing that every day, that's going to start to pay off. And accountability, that's why I said a lot of what we do is taking somebody's plan and goals and just ensuring, are we executing this plan? The best plans in the world are only as good as they're being executed. So this is what we came up with. How well are we following it? Are we investing the way that we said that we would? Are we saving the way that we said that we would? Have our goals changed? And if not, we got to figure out how to realign those. Just think of like a personal trainer for money. I mean, that's kind of what we do. A lot of personal trainers aren't teaching the eccentricities of human physiology and exercise science. They're just like, hey, Andrew, you're going to be here tomorrow at 6:30 in the morning, and we're going to work out, and I'm going to make sure that you do it. And it's not like you know how to run. Mm-hmm. And you know that your treadmill isn't supposed to be a clothes hanger, but that's how they end up because people don't have accountability. I mean, I don't mean to timestamp this episode, but we're not even to the end of January yet. And I've already noticed at our gym that like half of the New Year's wave, those guys are gone already. They're 3 weeks in, 2 weeks in. And it isn't because they don't know how to lift a barbell up and down or push start on a treadmill. You don't need to know how the Krebs cycle works and the minutia around your mitochondria to move some weights around. You need accountability. And a lot of men especially, and this goes way beyond finance and health. Most men that I know don't have people who regularly speak into their life and tell them what they need to know rather than what they want to hear. And I think men are terrible. I'm painting with a broad brush here, but men in general are terrible of having people that have permission to speak tough love into their life.
I agree wholeheartedly with that point. And that's something that Paul and I have been consistently noticing in a theme arising in some of our episodes with guests and just in our own, that men are missing that, whether it's our own fault or not. And what can we do to offer that? Like what, because we kind of thirst for that in a sense, but we don't go out of our way to look for it.
Yeah.
I think your podcast offers that to some degree. Mm-hmm. I think accountability ideally is interpersonal relationships, but even just some of your other shows, listening to that, like that can prick our conscience enough to be at least some accountability.
Right.
But I think it's not enough to read books and listen to podcasts. I'm gonna give you one more snapshot thing to think about. Just a real easy takeaway is education without execution is merely entertainment. Mm-hmm. And if we are learning things and we're getting good information, I mean, I know people have read like 12 parenting books. I'm like, man, you're like a first-time dad every single day I see. Like you implement anything. Like we can listen to a lot of good information, good knowledge, but if we don't execute it, it's really no good. And then we as dads have to be really honest with ourselves that if I am educating myself without implementing what I learned, what I was learning was merely just entertainment.
Right.
I might as well been watching a movie or a football game, because while the content may have been educational, if it's not implemented, it's not making the impact that it's supposed to in my life. So education without execution is merely entertainment. And Paul, I interrupted you. What were you going to mention?
Yeah, no, first off, I love that point. It's funny that you should mention that, because that is directly relatable to me, and one of my focuses this year is consolidation and cultivation. To read less, to consume less, but to apply more. Because it's not like I'm going to change by osmosis. I'm not just going to soak up all this knowledge and then all of a sudden become a transformer of parent knowledge. So it's exactly that. I need to be a scientist. I need to apply, see what works, see what doesn't work. So I love that point in that little phrase to sum it up. Mentioned how accountability is what helps us achieve our goals, and we need that in a lot of areas. You mentioned, like in the gym and fitness. Andrew, I know you achieved a big career goal in the past year or so by hiring a career coach, and I'm sure accountability was a large piece of that. And for our listeners who aren't watching video, Chad definitely knows his way around some weights. I can tell by your physique, Chad. But so you obviously are no stranger to accountability, financially, in fitness and whatever. Who or what has been a source of accountability for you?
Well, I have been blessed with some pretty incredible people in my life, pretty incredible men in my life. And in fact, I just had this conversation a couple weeks ago. We were just, towards the end of the year and just looking at the year in review. And I was at my mom's house with multiple family members. And one of the guys that came up in conversation is an author and speaker. His name is Nick Murray. And this is a guy that, for whatever reason, first of all, for your audience, if you want to know about investing, the best book I have ever read, and I read it for the first time 20 years ago, and after 20 years in this career, it's still the very best book in investing that I've ever laid hands on. It's called Simple Wealth, Inevitable Wealth. There's only a couple other books that even come close, but this still is the best. Simple Wealth, Inevitable Wealth by Nick Murray. But this is a guy that kind of took me under his wing 18 years ago. And this is 2007, 2008, at the beginning of the financial crisis. Of course, we didn't know how bad it was going to get, the whole financial meltdown. But I had just started this career. I had just gotten licensed. I had a baby on the way. And I'm sitting here with a biochemistry degree because my plan was to go into medicine. I was just this fledgling advisor that knew he had something that people needed, but didn't know how to get that across. I didn't even know what I didn't know. I am so blessed to have the business that I do, with a tremendous team around me, fantastic clients, many of whom have become some of my best friends. And a lot of it was because I didn't have to make so many mistakes. I could learn from others, learn from some of Nick's mistakes. I mean, even to this day, I am blown away by the intentionality that he's shown. And I emailed him one time and just like, I don't know why you chose to kind of take me under your wing. And I was like, I've never told you this before, but I love you. And there's nothing you can do about that. And I hope that doesn't make it weird. And he said, not sure how to respond, but I appreciate that. And it's, he's like, it's been an amazing journey. And I know he loves seeing his work manifest itself in others, that actually go do the thing. And that's just one example. I have lots of others. I'm very closely connected with the Dave Ramsey organization, and I've had some great mentors in there. I grew up in a church where men spoke into my life continuously, going hunting with guys and things. I mean, guys that are still in my life today, 40 years later, 35 years later. And I didn't appreciate it. Was so normal that I didn't fully appreciate it. And even now, I mean, some of the guys that I hang out with, and this is so rare. This is so rare. And I realize that I am blessed, because men have to work hard to find these types of people. But I have some just absolutely elite men that aren't afraid to push back, to poke into my life. But guys, a part of that is just showing up with excellence in other areas of your life, because excellence attracts excellence. And it's kind of like a chicken or the egg thing, right? So at some point, you just have to make a decision that mediocrity is off the table, that you will no longer accept it in the most important areas of your life. And you also need to be specific about what areas of your life are most important. I was at a dinner one time, and my sister-in-law was there, and she was asking something about dance lessons, and yeah, I was like, yeah, it's kind of embarrassing, but I don't care. And she's like, so are you gonna do all these lessons and do this and do that? I'm like, no, it's okay to suck. And she's like, that surprises me. You want to be good at everything. I'm like, no, I can't be. I know I can't be good at everything.
Right.
But I can be excellent at the most important things. And I think for the men listening, if you can find 2 or 3 pillars in your life where you decide that is not negotiable and you are going to strive for excellence and look for people. Men are lonely, whether they want to admit it, men are lonely, and excellence is a very lonely journey. Guys are looking for people to be on this journey with, and we just pretend that we don't need anybody else. But if you start being intentional about it, the right men in your life will just show up. You will have to work for it, but there's other people around you. If you can make yourself vulnerable and say, hey, this is what I'm looking for, this is what I need, here's the area I am trying to thrive in, and here's where I'm the right type of people will start showing up in your life.
Yeah.
That resonates with me.
And that's like
a bit.
Go ahead, Andrew.
As just especially the road to excellence. I've been blessed to know Paul since I was 12, and we're kind of on that journey to excellence together now. But yeah, it does get lonely walking that, trying to be that road to excellence in your own life. And it just gave me a lot to think about. Go ahead, Chad.
I was going to say, just one other, here's a side effect of this. And this hit me, it hits me often, but it hit me on New Year's Eve. We have this big group of people up. And so we work very closely with law enforcement. And we had a couple guys that Andrew Paul, he's like basically like Batman. I mean, this guy's put more federal criminals away than probably anybody else in Alaska. And they had a drug bust they were working on. So he comes up that night and he's still got 2 radios going. He's still trying to orchestrate this drug buy from our house. And we've got the SWAT sergeant there as well, the lead armorer for the Anchorage Police Department SWAT team, a couple lieutenants. And this is like not a plan. I mean, it's not planned that like, this is a police department party. It was just, here's some of our closest friends. We want to have everybody up. And so the kids are doing some fireworks and things like that. And it's like 10 below, and us dads were inside where it's comfortable. And so we got like, some guys were working on a suppressor, and we got this guy running a drug bust. My wife comes in, they had a computer up and they were running some, anyways, like, are you guys working? Like, this is supposed to be a party. And it just struck me like, my kids are surrounded by this.
Right.
3 or 4 of these guys are the absolute best in the state at what they do. Absolute best. You couldn't even come up with an argument. That's what that's normal. Now, it was a little bit weird to have the guns out and silencers out and one guy run a drug bust. Like, that doesn't always happen.
Right.
But that's the stuff that my kids are around. They know what a good man looks like. Because, Paul, we're not trying to raise good kids. We're trying to raise excellent adults. And one way to do that, if we as men surround ourselves with excellent men, our boys see what excellence looks like. And it doesn't have to be their dad telling them. And our girls are going to see what a real man looks like. So when she meets the knuckleheads that are going to be chasing after her, she's like, yeah, I like the attention. He's cute and he's funny, but I know what a real man is supposed to look like, and this joker just is not it. Right. So that's, I think, a side effect of having accountability, having mentors in your life, that your kids see these people and like, wow, this is pretty cool. And my kids, especially the younger ones, don't fully appreciate it. The older ones are starting to realize it. But the types of folks that they've been surrounded with, and this is some of this is just the grace of God. But I think God blesses intentionality, and that's just something I wanted to mention, because not only do you benefit from having men speaking to your life, but that's going to have a trickle-down effect through your whole family, indirectly through you and directly through those other people.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, more and more we're seeing the impact that the presence of, or the lack of presence of, a good, solid community has on yourself as an individual and on your kids. So I love to hear that. Kind of summarizing what we've been talking about, we've talked about like being intentional, having that defined and meaningful goal to work towards, and then having being able to hold ourselves or having somebody who can help us hold ourselves accountable for that. If you were to boil this down into one practical habit that a dad listening to this show could start applying today, what would that be?
I think it starts with, what do you want your life to look like in 10 years? Like if you're walking into your house in 10 years, who's there? What's the energy in the room? Where is the house? What do you want your life to look like? Because life unfolds by design or by default. Good lives only happen by design. Most people live their lives by default. And it doesn't mean you can't change that vision, but I think very few people sit down and think like, what do I want things to look like? I mean, interactions with my kids. Like one of the things that my wife and I right now are very intentionally planning is we have 6 kids, as you mentioned, Paul. We live in Alaska. It's an isolated state. The likelihood of all 6 of our kids being in the area is super, super low. So we are already in the process of designing a life where we can be extremely mobile, because we are going to infiltrate the life of our kids and grandkids wherever they are. They're not going to be able to get away from us, you know?
Right. I love that. Infiltrate.
But that's something we're doing now, getting ahead of it. And here's the other thing too is, this is a little bit hypocritical. I have these conversations so much with other people that sometimes I don't have them enough with my own spouse. But one of the first times I asked my wife this question, like, you will learn amazing things about your spouse when you start asking, what do you want life to look like in 5, 10, 15? Like, what is your day going to look like when we don't have kids running around? And I asked my wife this on Valentine's Day, this like 8 or 9 years ago. And we're at nice dinner and we're just kind of talking through things, having a good time. And I was like, yeah, what would you, like if money was no object and kids are gone, like what would you want your life to look like? And she goes, there's so many places in Alaska we've never visited. Like it'd be super cool to be a camp host and just live in different campgrounds across Alaska, meet people from other states and things like that they're passing through, and then just move around to different campgrounds. Now, I'm an introvert, so I'm like, okay, in your wildest dreams, money is no object. You're going to be homeless, talking to strangers,
Right.
and a vagabond who's not even homeless in one spot, but has to move all around the state, all around the state. And she's like, well, when you say it like that, point being, like, that's not my vision
Right.
of what I want. Like, but I learned something about her that day. And part of that was wanting to experience other parts of the state that she's never seen. Alaska's huge. Alaska is 750,000 square miles. You could fit most of the United States inside most of the contiguous lower 48. And we just haven't seen a lot of it. So I still don't know that I want to pretend like I'm homeless in the future, because I work too hard to sleep on the ground. But anyways, that's a whole other conversation. But learning what is important to your spouse so you can start weaving these dreams together. Because guys, so often I sit down with a couple and I ask that question. You're looking to retire in 3 years. You've been a cop, or you've been in the oil field for 35 years, or you're getting ready to sell a construction company. Like, that's been a part of your life what does your life look like when that piece is removed? And I will often get completely different answers from spouses. And they usually don't know their answer. Like, they'll look at each other like, I didn't know that's what you wanted to do. And then you got to put on your marriage counseling hat. Anyways, but I think asking those questions of yourself and of your spouse, like, what do you want your life to look like? Who do you want to be spending your time with, is a really good place, because in order to come up with a path, you have to start clarifying the destination.
Yeah. That's a great takeaway or piece of advice. And, and that's so easy to apply. You could do it at the dinner table. You could do it in the car. You could do it on a date. And so what a great piece of advice. We are running short on time. Sadly, I wish we could keep talking, but we do like to ask a few quick questions at the end, and we could, spend a whole episode on each of these. But if you could give us, a 1 to 2 sentence answer for these, and we'll move it along and let you get on to your next engagement. But so first one is, what does being a good dad look like to you?
I think a good dad is preparing my kids to be good adults and ultimately introducing them to a relationship with God. I know that I can't control that, but I can at least make the introduction.
Love it. What is the number one habit that helps you show up as a dad?
Gratitude. A lot of people think gratitude is an attitude. I believe gratitude is a practice. You practice being grateful, and then your attitude will align with that discipline.
That's awesome. we heard from a previous guest, I know I'm prolonging this, but a previous guest of
No, you're good.
that, I forget how long it is, but that there were studies that if I think it's like 6 weeks or 8 weeks of practicing gratitude on a daily basis, your happiness is increased by like 20%. I don't know how they came up with those numbers, but and my family and I we're on today will be day 10. We're on a 90-day goal to share 3 things that we're each grateful for at dinner every day. So glad to hear from you that is something that has worked out for you, because it'll keep us focused. Andrew, I think the next one's on you.
So I have 2. I'm only going to ask one. I'm going to email you my other question, because just listening to it, I really value the insight you've given. After the show, I'll send you an email. But my one question for now is, what advice do you have to young men that are aspiring to be dads? It can be either financially related or habit, virtue-based, but just something for us young men that want to be dads and aren't there yet.
I think it's surrounding yourself with people who look like the guy that you want to become. So going back to that mentoring and accountability conversation earlier, surrounding yourself with the types of people that you want to become.
Awesome.
What was your other question?
My other question was, so I hear a lot from single guys that want to be married and have a family. They'll say like, oh, I want to wait till I'm more financially stable. And that's all they'll say. And it's like, okay, does financial stability ever come if that's your goal? And it almost seems like they're trying to hedge a risk, so to say, in that, because, getting married is a risk. Mm-hmm. And a lot of things could happen. So trying to hedge it, saying, I want to be more financially stable. Like, what would you say to someone that says that? Saying
I want to be more financially stable before I start a family is kind of like, it's a little bit like, there's no such thing as financial stability. I mean, there's financial security, but that means different things to different people. I think for a lot of people, that can be an excuse, because you never feel financially stable. I mean, income fluctuates, especially if you own a business, things like that. There will always be a reason to not do the thing. It's a little bit like saying, I will be more grateful when I have more things to be grateful for.
Right.
Homie, you ain't never going to be grateful then, because there will always be more. There will always be something else. Gratitude is something that comes from being grateful.
Yeah.
And so one of the guys that was at our New Year's Eve thing, I used to train a lot with our SWAT team, and then some of the SWAT teams down in the lower 48 and stuff like that. I don't do it much anymore, but I was looking to go to this one class, and I was like, hey, what do you think about this instructor? And he's like, I think on paper he's good, but he doesn't have any military experience, never been in a shooting, and I have a really hard time taking gunfighting advice from somebody who's never been shot at. And the point he was trying to make is, theories are great, but it's really, nothing can prepare you for being in a gunfight like being in a gunfight.
Right.
And I'm not saying like being in a gunfight is the same as being a dad, but you cannot be prepared to be a dad. It does not exist. There's no such thing. I have 6 kids. Every single time I felt unprepared. Every single time there were things like, I wish this was different. You don't know what it's like to be a parent until the bullets are whizzing by your head, metaphorically speaking, usually.
Hopefully.
So, and I guess I would also say that same person, that's more theoretical or more philosophical, but also say, okay, what are you doing to be more financially stable? Like, what steps are you taking? Like, I see you driving a car that you can't afford, and I see you wearing $300 pair of jeans. Like, you're doing a lot of things that are not aligned with the person that you said you want to become.
Right.
So what are some practical steps that you can take to be more financially stable? And what does financially stable look like? Let's attach some goals to this. Is it, I want to eliminate all my consumer debt? Is it, I want to have $10,000 saved in an emergency fund? Like, let's put some numbers to these goals so it can actually be a goal. Otherwise, it's just a wish. And this kind of goes back to this idea of being perfect. I think sometimes perfectionism can be an excuse for procrastination.
Yes.
Soft, squishy goals are often an excuse for procrastination too, because nobody can ever pin us down. I can say like, I'm going to start a business when I'm more financially secure. Mm-hmm. Andrew, you can come back to me and say, hey, you got an extra $100,000 in the bank. How come you haven't started that business? And I say, well, I'm waiting for this. I never attached anything meaningful to that goal, and it's like sticking jello to a wall. You can't
Right.
pin it down. In reality, I'm scared, man. I'm scared. I'm scared to start. I'm scared of failure. I'm scared that I won't be a good dad. I'm scared I won't be a good husband. I'm scared if I go back to school that I won't do as well. If I go get that master's degree, a lot of men allow fear to dictate major aspects of their life, and then we put vague goals around them and saying, I'm not ready until this thing happens.
Yeah.
So sorry, that was a lot longer answer, but I'm glad it wasn't just an email.
Yeah.
I appreciate you giving us those 4 extra minutes, Chad, to answer that. That was. There's a lot of it that I can apply to myself, so I'm glad we did speak about that.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you so much, Chad. And we covered a lot of great stuff today, you know, from what a budget actually is, to being intentional, to defining what that future of yours you're working towards, and to holding yourself accountable to it, to getting there. And also, I know we didn't get to circle back to it, but I don't want us to forget that at the end of the day, you know, someone is going to be teaching our kids about anything and everything, but including money. And we have to show up by our example to start teaching them. So, Chad, I really appreciate your time. Looking forward to sharing this with our audience, and we'll be in touch.
All right, guys. Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much.
All right. You have a great one.